From family disappointment to secret billionaire, how I built a financial empire while my family thought I was broke. The elegant restaurant buzzed with conversation as waiters weaved between tables, carrying steaming plates and pouring expensive wine. My family was gathered to celebrate my father's 70th birthday, a milestone worthy of the finest dining experience in the city. To any outside observer, we looked like the perfect family. Successful, happy, united. But appearances can be deceiving. "So, Alex, still doing that internet thing?" My Uncle Gerald's voice boomed across the table, drawing everyone's attention. He swirled his whiskey glass, his expression a mixture of amusement and pity. "Must be nice playing around on computers all day while the rest of us do real work." Several family members chuckled. My father, the guest of honor, smiled tightly but said nothing to defend me. He never did. "It's going well. Thanks for asking," I replied with practiced calm, taking a sip of water. After 10 years, I'd perfected the art of hiding my irritation behind a pleasant mask. "What is it you do again? Those YouTube videos or something?" My cousin Melissa asked, her tone suggesting she was merely humoring me. "I create educational content online," I explained for what felt like the thousandth time. "I teach people how to invest, manage their finances, and build wealth." Right. Those little YouTube things," Uncle Gerald interjected. "My neighbor's kid does that too. Films himself playing video games. Says he's going to be rich someday." He laughed dismissively, looking around the table for approval. I checked my watch. 7:45 p.m. In exactly 15 minutes, I would change everything. 10 years ago, I made a decision that shocked my family. I walked away from my secure, prestigious position at Goldman Sachs to start a YouTube channel about financial literacy. The reaction was swift and brutal. "You're throwing away everything you've worked for," my father had said, his voice cold with disappointment. "This internet fad won't last, and you'll have nothing to show for it." My mother had cried, asking where she had gone wrong in raising me. My brother James, the golden child with his law firm partnership, had laughed outright and predicted I'd come crawling back within 6 months. Only my sister Emma had offered support. "If that's what you want, Alex, I hope it works out." I could have told them about my vision, how I saw a massive gap in financial education, how millions of people were desperate for accessible knowledge about money management, how digital platforms were the future of education. I tried at first, but they didn't want to hear it. Their minds were made up. I was having a quarter-life crisis, running away from real responsibility, destined for failure, so I stopped trying to explain. The first 2 years were brutally difficult. I worked 18-hour days, living off savings while building content and trying to grow my audience. Each family gathering became an exercise in endurance as I weathered passive-aggressive comments and well-meaning suggestions about real job opportunities. "Johnson and Associates is hiring junior analysts," my father would say. I could put in a word. "Not interested, Dad," I'd reply, and the table would fall silent with collective disappointment. What they didn't know, what I never told them, was that by the end of those 2 years, my YouTube channel had 500,000 subscribers. My first online course had generated $430,000 in its initial launch. I had hired 3 employees and was renting a small office downtown. But I kept driving my old Honda to family dinners. I maintained the same modest apartment. I let them believe I was struggling because honestly, I was tired of trying to convince them otherwise. "Alex barely touches his food at these gatherings," my mother stage whispered to my aunt. "Probably can't afford to eat out much these days." I bit back a smile. The truth was, I owned a stake in this very restaurant, along with 14 others across the country. The maitre d' had nearly blown my cover earlier by greeting me with too much deference. I had tipped him generously to maintain my charade for one final night. My brother was now regaling the table with stories from his recent vacation in the Maldives. "The overwater bungalow alone was 5 figures a night," he boasted, "but some experiences are worth the splurge." I thought about the private island I'd purchased in the Caribbean last year and took another sip of water. While my family thought I was playing around on the internet, I had built Financial Freedom, the largest online financial education platform in the world. 20 million subscribers across my channels, 30 million users on my app, a team of 127 employees, an investment fund managing over $12 billion in assets. Last month, Forbes had valued my company at just over $2 billion. The magazine with my face on the cover was currently tucked into a manila envelope that sat beside me on the table. 7:55 p.m. 5 more minutes. The server appeared at my elbow. "Is everything to your satisfaction, sir?" she asked quietly. "Perfect timing," I murmured back. "Could you bring the special item I left at the front now and the champagne?" She nodded discreetly and disappeared. My heart began to race. I had planned this moment for months, rehearsed it countless times. The document inside that innocuous manila envelope would shatter the narrative my family had constructed about me, about success, about what constituted a worthwhile life. Was I being petty? Perhaps. But after a decade of snide remarks and pitying glances, I needed to reclaim my dignity. More importantly, I needed my father, just once before it was too late, to look at me with pride. The server returned carrying a silver tray with the envelope and a bottle of Dom Perignon that I knew cost more than my brother's monthly car payment. She placed both beside me with a knowing smile. "What's this?" my father asked. Conversation at the table dying down as curiosity took hold. I stood up, suddenly calm. The moment had arrived. "Dad, before we bring out your birthday cake, I wanted to give you a special gift." I picked up the envelope. "Inside this is something I've wanted to share with you, with all of you, for a long time." My father's expression was guarded as he accepted the envelope. "You didn't need to get me anything extravagant, Alex. We know your situation." Those words, "your situation," were the final straw. The gentle, measured reveal I had planned crystallized into something sharper, more decisive. "Open it, Dad. Please." With deliberate slowness, he broke the seal and pulled out the contents. A financial statement from one of Switzerland's most exclusive private banks, and the recent feature article from Forbes magazine with my face on the cover. His eyes widened as he scanned the document, confusion giving way to disbelief. This can't be right," he muttered, adjusting his reading glasses. "There must be some mistake." "No mistake," I said, my voice steady. "That's my current net worth, and the magazine explains how I built my company, Financial Freedom, from a YouTube channel with 100 subscribers to the largest online financial education platform in the world, valued at just over $2 billion last month." A collective gasp rippled around the table. James nearly choked on his wine. "$2 billion?" my father repeated, his voice barely audible. "I have over 20 million subscribers across my channels now," I continued, finally allowing myself to speak freely about the empire I'd built. "The app has another 30 million users. We've expanded into investment management with a fund currently overseeing assets of $12 billion. I own significant real estate globally, including a stake in this restaurant in the building that houses your law firm, James." My brother's face drained of color. "But you make YouTube videos," Uncle Gerald sputtered, his earlier condescension evaporating. "I create educational content that changes lives," I corrected him. "I teach financial literacy to people who never had access to that knowledge before. My courses have helped thousands of families escape debt, build emergency funds, and secure their retirements. And yes, I've become very wealthy doing it." Emma was beaming at me from across the table, tears in her eyes. She had always believed in me, even without knowing the full scope of my success. My mother reached for the magazine with trembling hands. "Why didn't you tell us, Alex? All these years." I took a deep breath. This was the hardest part. "Because you made it clear you weren't interested. Every time I tried to talk about my work, you changed the subject. You assumed I was failing because my path didn't look like yours." I looked directly at my father. "I wanted you to be proud of me because of who I am, not what I'm worth. But after 10 years, I realized that might never happen unless I showed you this." The questions came pouring out after that initial shock. "But why live in that small apartment?" my mother asked, bewildered. "Why drive that old Honda?" James added. "Why let us believe you were struggling all this time?" my father finally said, looking up at me, his expression unreadable. It was a fair question. The truth was complicated. At first, I was just focused on building the business. Every dollar went back into growth, I explained. By the time the money became significant, too much time had passed. "You'd all formed your opinions about my choices," I shrugged. "And honestly, I was hurt. I wanted to prove to myself that I didn't need your approval." James leaned forward, a new calculation behind his eyes. "So all those times we offered to help you out, I was already earning more in a month than you make in a year," I finished for him. It was petty, but satisfying nonetheless. "I accepted those dinner invitations where you insisted on paying because it seemed important to your ego, not because I needed the free meal." The server chose that moment to return with my father's birthday cake, complete with sparkling candles. The jarring juxtaposition of the celebratory dessert with the emotional revelation unfolding at our table made several people laugh nervously. After an awkward rendition of "Happy Birthday," during which my father seemed miles away, lost in thought, the cake was cut and distributed. No one ate much. They were too busy processing what they'd just learned, sneaking glances at me as if seeing a stranger. Uncle Gerald, predictably, was the first to recover and attempt to capitalize on the situation. "You know, Alex, I've been thinking about investing more for retirement. Perhaps we could set up a time to—" "Gerald," my mother cut him off sharply, "not now." My father still hadn't spoken. He kept looking between the financial statement and me, as if trying to reconcile the son he thought he knew with this revelation. Finally, he cleared his throat. "I think I owe you an apology, Alex." The table fell silent again. "No, Dad, that's not why I—" He held up his hand, stopping me. "Let me finish. I've spent my entire life believing there was only one path to security and success. The same path my father taught me. A respected profession. A steady climb up the corporate ladder. A gold watch at retirement." He gestured to the documents. "You showed me there are paths I couldn't even imagine. And you walked one of them, alone without my support or understanding." My carefully constructed composure began to crack. This was more than I had hoped for. "I'm sorry I didn't listen when you tried to explain your vision," he continued. "I'm sorry I measured your worth by standards that were already becoming outdated. Most of all, I'm sorry I made you feel you needed to hide your success to spare my pride." Tears pricked at my eyes. "I just wanted you to believe in me, Dad." "I should have," he said simply. "I see that now." The evening transformed after that. For the first time in a decade, my family asked genuine questions about my business, how it worked, what I actually did day to day, how we created and monetized content. They listened, really listened, as I explained the metrics, the strategy, the vision behind financial freedom. "Show us," Emma suggested eagerly. "Your office, your real life, I want to see it all." A week later, I invited my family to visit my actual home, a 6,000 square foot penthouse overlooking Central Park. I arranged for cars to pick them up, not bothering to hide my wealth anymore. I still remember my father's face as he stepped off the private elevator into my living space. His eyes widened as he took in the modern art on the walls, pieces by artists whose names he recognized from museum exhibitions and auction records. "The art collection alone is insured for 8 figures, my mother whispered to James, who was examining a small Banksy with newfound respect. "This is where you live? All this time?" my father asked, running his hand along the marble countertop of my kitchen island. "One of my homes," I admitted. "I also have places in Malibu, London, and a small island in the Caribbean." "An island," James repeated, shaking his head in disbelief. "You own an actual island." I led them to my home office, a state-of-the-art studio set up with equipment that rivaled professional broadcast facilities. Multiple screens displayed analytics dashboards tracking real-time engagement metrics across our platforms. "This is where the magic happens," I explained, "where I film most of my content." "Show us how it works," my father requested quietly. So I did. I walked them through my process, how I researched topics, scripted content, filmed, and edited. I showed them the back end of our platform, the customer management system, the sophisticated algorithms that personalize learning paths for millions of users. "You built all this?" my father asked, a new respect in his voice. "With a team of brilliant people," I nodded. "But yes, this was my vision from the beginning." Later that evening, as we sat on my terrace watching the sunset paint the city skyline, my father asked the question I'd been waiting for. "Why did you do it this way, Alex? Why hide your success for so long?" I considered my answer carefully. At first, it wasn't intentional. I was just focused on building something meaningful. Then, when success came, faster and bigger than even I had imagined, it felt like it was too late to correct the narrative. You all had such fixed ideas about what I was doing. I paused, looking out over the city. And to be completely honest, there was something liberating about being underestimated. It removed all pressure, all expectations. I could build exactly what I wanted without anyone questioning my methods or motives. No one was watching over my shoulder, telling me to be more practical, more traditional, more cautious. My father nodded slowly. "I would have done all those things, wouldn't I?" "Probably," I admitted. "You were so certain about what success should look like." "And you proved me wrong," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "More wrong than I could have possibly imagined." The changes that followed my revelation were both swift and profound. Family dynamics that had been calcified for a decade began to shift and reorganize themselves around this new reality. My mother adapted the fastest. Within a week, she had devoured every article ever written about me or my company, joined all my social media channels, and begun proudly informing strangers that her son was a digital entrepreneur and philanthropist. The speed of her transformation from concerned parent to enthusiastic supporter was both touching and slightly amusing. James took longer. Years of sibling rivalry doesn't evaporate overnight, even in the face of undeniable success. But eventually, curiosity overcame his pride. "I want to understand what you actually do," he said one evening as we sat in my home office. "Not just the business model, I get that part, but the actual content. What are you teaching people that's so valuable?" I pulled up one of my most popular videos, a breakdown of compound interest that had over 12 million views. This concept alone has changed thousands of lives, Ricardito, I explained. Most people never truly grasp how compound interest works, how it can either build or destroy wealth depending on which side of the equation you're on. We watched the video together, and for the first time, my brother saw my work as substantive and valuable. You explain it better than my economics professors did, he admitted reluctantly. I actually understand it now, in a way I never did before. That's the whole point, I replied. Financial knowledge doesn't have to be complicated or exclusive. When presented clearly, anyone can understand these concepts. The most significant transformation, however, was in my father. The man who had dismissed my career choices frivolous now watched my content with rapt attention. He created accounts on every platform where I published, consuming years of back content like a student cramming for an exam. 3 months after the birthday revelation, he called me with an unexpected request. I want to learn how to do what you do, he said without preamble. What do you mean, Dad? The videos, the teaching. I've been thinking. I have 40 years of knowledge about small business accounting that could help people. Not on your scale, of course, but maybe for local businesses, startups. I was momentarily speechless. My father, the traditional accountant who still kept paper ledgers as backups to his computer files, wanted to become a content creator. Are you serious? I finally asked. Completely, he replied. I've been watching how you explain complex concepts, break them down, make them accessible. I could do that for basic accounting principles, if you'd be willing to show me how to get started. And so at 70 years old, my father became the unlikely star of Small Business Sense. The dad joke name was his idea. We set him up with the equipment, taught him the basics of recording and editing, and helped him outline his first few episodes. His delivery was stiff at first, but there was an undeniable authenticity to his approach that resonated with viewers. Small business owners appreciated advice from someone with decades of real-world experience. Within 6 months, he had built a modest but engaged following and had developed a genuine passion for his new endeavor. I never understood before, he told me one evening as we finished editing his latest video. The connection you feel with your audience, the satisfaction of knowing you've helped someone you've never met, it's addictive. I smiled. That's why I couldn't give it up, even when everyone thought I was failing. He placed his hand on my shoulder. I'm glad you didn't listen to me. The document I had dramatically revealed at my father's birthday, the proof of my financial success, had opened the door to reconciliation. But ironically, it was this shared experience of content creation that truly rebuilt our relationship. For the first time, my father and I spoke the same language. We had common ground that went beyond DNA. Emma, who had always been my emotional supporter, became my professional ally as well. With her background in education, she had invaluable insights into learning styles and curriculum development. What began as casual suggestions evolved into a formal role, consulting on educational design for my platform. I never imagined we'd work together, she confessed over lunch at my office one day, watching my team of employees bustling around the open concept space. But this feels right somehow. Even Uncle Gerald eventually came around, though his transformation was less about respect and more about opportunism. His attempts to leverage our newfound close relationship into investment advice were transparent but harmless. I directed him to my company's free resources like any other user, which he reported to be surprisingly helpful despite his initial disappointment at not receiving special treatment. The most unexpected outcome of my revelation wasn't the changed family dynamics or even the professional collaborations that emerged. It was the profound effect it had on me personally. For years, I had carried the weight of my family's disapproval and misunderstanding, letting it fuel both my drive to succeed and my detachment from them. I hadn't realized how exhausting that burden had been until it was lifted. With nothing left to prove, I found myself working differently, more purposefully, less frantically. I delegated more, trusted my team more fully, and even took my first real vacation in nearly a decade. A month in New Zealand with no content creation schedule, just exploration and rest. 1 year after my father's birthday revelation, Forbes ran another feature on me, this time focusing not on the financial success of my company, but on its mission and impact. The reporter interviewed dozens of our users, ordinary people whose lives had been transformed by the financial knowledge they'd gained through our platform. A single mother in Detroit who had paid off $78,000 in debt and bought her first home. A couple in their 60s who had been able to retire 5 years earlier than planned. A young immigrant who had started a successful business using the principles he'd learned from our courses. These stories, the real human impact of my work, meant more to me than any valuation or balance sheet ever could. And now, finally, my family understood that too. 6 months after my father's birthday dinner, we gathered again at the same restaurant. This time, there was no hidden agenda, no secret document waiting to be revealed. just a family dinner that felt, perhaps for the first time in my adult life, genuinely comfortable. As we waited for dessert, my father raised his glass. "I'd like to make a toast," he announced, to Alex, who had the courage to follow his own path, even when none of us understood it, who built something remarkable and changed not only his own life but the lives of millions of others through his work. "And who finally showed up as big brother," James added with a self-deprecating smile, raising his own glass. "To Alex," they chorused. I felt a swell of emotion as I looked around the table at my family. The document that had changed everything 6 months ago was now just a memory, its work complete. It had served its purpose, not just proving I was right all along, but opening the door to something far more valuable. A family that finally saw me for who I really was and, miracle of miracles, actually liked that person. "Thanks," I said simply, raising my glass in return. To family, the ones who are there at both the beginning and the end of the journey, even when the middle gets a little complicated. My father caught my eye and nodded, a world of understanding passing between us. We had both been wrong and right in our own ways. He had been wrong about the path to success, but right about the importance of persistence and excellence. I had been right about following my vision, but wrong to shut them out of it for so long. As we lingered over coffee and dessert, making plans for my father's new content series and debating the merits of different investment strategies, I reflected on the document that had changed everything, the proof of my success that I'd kept hidden for so long. Its true value hadn't been in the numbers it contained, impressive as they were. Its value was in the conversations it started, the doors it opened, the healing it initiated. Sometimes the most powerful documents aren't contracts or deeds or certificates at all. They're the ones that finally allow the truth to speak for itself, that bridge the gap between who others think we are and who we've actually become. They're the ones that let us say, after years of doubt and dismissal, "I was right all along." And now you see it too. Looking back on my journey from family disappointment to secret billionaire, I've identified several crucial lessons that might help others walking unconventional paths. 1. Validation is an inside job. For years, I sought my family's approval, believing their recognition would somehow validate my choices. The truth is, external validation can never fill the void of self-doubt. Success must be defined internally first. 2. Being underestimated can be a superpower. When people underestimate you, they leave you alone. There's freedom in flying under the radar, building without scrutiny or unsolicited advice. Use this freedom wisely. 3. Money doesn't equal worth. My net worth changed dramatically over those 10 years, but my human worth remained constant. I was no more valuable as a billionaire than as a struggling creator. The sooner you separate financial success from self-worth, the happier you'll be. 4. Impact outlasts income. When I revealed my financial success, it grabbed my family's attention. But what ultimately earned their respect was understanding the impact of my work, how it changed real lives, solved real problems, created real value. Money talks, but impact resonates. 5. Authentic work compounds. Like the financial principle I teach, the returns on authentic work compound over time. Small, consistent efforts toward a vision you truly believe in will eventually yield exponential results. Last month, I was invited to speak at my old university's business school. The auditorium was packed with students eager to hear the secret to my success. They wanted formulas, strategies, shortcuts. Instead, I told them this story about rejection, persistence, and the courage to follow your own vision even when those closest to you don't understand it. About defining success on your own terms and recognizing that sometimes the greatest achievement isn't the wealth you accumulate, but the wisdom you gain along the way. The real secret, I told them, is that there is no secret, just conviction in your vision, resilience in the face of doubt, and patience for the world to catch up to what you already know to be true. As I left the stage to thunderous applause, my phone buzzed with a text from my father. "Proud of you, son, always have been, even when I didn't show it right." And in that moment, I knew that the true measure of my success wasn't the billions in my bank account or the millions of subscribers to my platform. It was this: the journey from misunderstanding to mutual respect, from disappointment to pride, from secret success to shared joy, from family outcast to secret billionaire and back to family again, whole, healed, and finally seen for who I truly am. 3 years after my revelation at my father's birthday dinner, financial freedom has continued to grow beyond even my ambitious projections. We now reach over 50 million people worldwide, with content translated into 27 languages. Our foundation has provided scholarships to thousands of students from disadvantaged backgrounds, empowering the next generation with both financial knowledge and resources. My father's Small Business Sense channel has developed a cult following among entrepreneurs and small business owners. At 73, he's found an unexpected second career that brings him more fulfillment than his 4 decades as a traditional accountant ever did. He often jokes that he's following in my footsteps, though we both know it's more of a parallel path. 2 generations finding their voice in different epochs of the digital age. James and I have developed a surprisingly effective professional relationship. His legal expertise combined with my platform has resulted in a series on financial protection and legal literacy that has helped countless people navigate complex systems previously accessible only to the wealthy. Our childhood rivalry has evolved into something resembling mutual respect, perhaps even admiration. Emma has transformed our educational approach, bringing research-backed methodologies that have dramatically improved learning outcomes for our users. Under her guidance, we've developed adaptive learning paths that meet people wherever they are on their financial journey. As for me, I've found a balance I never thought possible during those frenetic early years of building my empire. I work fewer hours but with greater impact. I share my wealth openly with causes and people I believe in. I've even started dating seriously for the first time in years, something I never made time for when I was living my double life. Last week, my family gathered at my Caribbean island to celebrate my 40th birthday. As we sat on the beach watching the sunset, my father put his arm around my shoulders. "You know what I've been thinking about lately?" he asked. "What's that, Dad?" "How different things might have been if we had supported your vision from the beginning. If we had believed in you, instead of doubting you." I considered this for a moment, watching the waves roll in. "I've thought about that too," I admitted, "but I'm not sure it would have worked out better. The struggle shaped me. The doubt fueled me. Having to prove myself, even to myself, pushed me to build something greater than I might have otherwise." He nodded slowly. "Perhaps you're right. Still, I wish we hadn't wasted so many years." "They weren't wasted," I assured him. "They were just part of the journey. And look where we ended up." We both turned to watch the rest of our family laughing and playing in the surf. James teaching his son to bodyboard, Emma collecting shells with my mother, Uncle Gerald dozing contentedly under an umbrella. The secret billionaire was secret no more, but the wealth that mattered most wasn't the kind that had appeared on that financial statement 3 years ago. It was this: the richness of reconciliation, the abundance of acceptance, the invaluable treasure of being truly known and loved, not despite your choices, but because of them and the person they revealed you to be. "To the journey," my father said, raising his glass. "To the journey," I agreed. "Past, present, and future." In that moment, I knew with absolute certainty that while building a billion-dollar empire had been an extraordinary achievement, rebuilding my relationship with my family was the true masterpiece of my life's work, one that no balance sheet could ever fully capture, but whose dividends would continue to enrich us all for generations to come.